All right, English 111 students, we are continuing in our remote learning environment. And today we're going to be learning about arguments of proposal. Now, your essay number 3, I'm going to tell you right now, is going to be an argument of proposal based on some civic issue. Now, we'll talk more about that next week, but suffice it to say, this week, we're going to talk about argument proposal. Be ready. Your third essay is going to be an argument of proposal. We'll talk more about that essay next week. We'll start choosing topics and whatnot next week. But this week, just learn as much as you can about the argument of proposal. It's chapter 12 in your textbook. You also need to read chapter 11 in your textbook, but I'm not going to lecture on chapter 11. So you will be responsible for chapters 11 and 12 this week, though I'm only going to lecture on chapter 12, the argument of proposal. You will have a quiz this week, quiz number 6, and it will cover chapters 11 and 12. So you get what I'm saying, right? The quiz is going to cover 2 chapters. I'm going to lecture on 1 chapter, the argument of proposal. And the argument of proposal is what your third essay is going to be about. Okay, I've beat that horse enough. Let's jump in and see what this argument of proposal thing is. We'll skip the first slide here. And we're going to look at an argument of proposal. What is an argument of proposal? Well, an argument of proposal suggests a change or an action, right? We're proposing something. I want you to change something you're doing. I want you to take some kind of action. And so I'm going to propose that to you through an argument of proposal. Now, it can argue for or against something. So I can argue that I want you to do something, or I can argue that I want you to stop doing something, right? So arguments of proposal can be pro or con, argue for or against. When we look at an argument of proposal and we look at the thesis statement, we have a problem or a topic, right? We know this. All thesis statements have a topic, right? But the argument of proposal is looking at the topic or a problem. It's something that you want to change or somebody to take action on. And the proposal claim most often is going to look like something like this. A should do B, or A should not do B, right? And then our reasons or our main points are because of C. So let me give you an example. So your thesis is going to be A should do B because of C. That's your basic format. And so here's an example. Every student who takes out a federal student loan, so federal student loans is our topic, our problem. So every student who takes out a federal student loan should have to perform some sort of national service. So my proposal claim is that every student who takes out a loan should have to perform some sort of national service because, and now when you see the because, you know you're going to be jumping into your main points, because number 1, it will ensure the country gets something in return for the loan. 2, it will teach personal responsibility. And 3, it will enhance national pride and patriotism. Do you see how nice and compact this thesis statement is? Now, I'm not asking you to agree with this thesis statement. All I'm saying is, as an example, we've got a topic, federal student loans. We've got a claim, students who take out these loans should have to perform some kind of national service. And we have our reasons or our main points because 1, 2, and 3. Okay? Okay. Some characteristics of arguments of proposal is that they suggest a change or action. We've already said that. They are future focused. If you're looking into the past, then you're living in the past, right? Proposals say, hey, I want something to change in the future. I want this to happen, or I want this not to happen, or I want this to stop happening, whatever the case is. We're looking to the future, and of course, arguments of proposal are centered on the audience. And you say, well, aren't all arguments centered on the audience? And arguably they are, but proposals most certainly are so, because you are trying to get other people to make a change or take an action or stop an action, right? So we definitely are focused on our audience thing because we're trying to do what? Persuade, right? We're trying to persuade. We're trying to get people to change their behavior, take action, or stop an action. How do we write an argument of proposal? Well, we've got to clearly define the problem to be addressed. If you want something to change, or you want somebody to take an action or stop an action, you've got to clearly define what the problem is. Sometimes this is harder to do than it seems, but it's step one. We've got to do this, right? We've got to clearly define the problem. Secondly, we've got to create a clear thesis statement that identifies the problem, suggests the change or action, and gives the reasons for the change or action. So what we just looked at in the previous slide. So we got to create that nice, clear thesis statement. Then we've got to conduct our research, revise our thesis statement. We've seen this before. Then we've got to develop our main points, which should already be in our thesis statement because there are reasons. And when I say develop main points, what I mean is flesh them out, get the statistics and whatever you're going to use to support those main points, and then write your proposal, right? Pretty simple stuff. Some considerations to have in mind when you're making an argumentative proposal. In the main body, you must demonstrate how your change or your action addresses the problem or problems at hand, okay? You'd be surprised at how many students don't do this, how many people writing professionally don't do this, right? You've got to make sure that in your main body, you're addressing the problem at hand. Sometimes people will go off on tangents and they start addressing problems, but not the problem that they started off in their thesis statement. You got to have everything's got to be nested in that thesis statement. You got to continually look back to that thesis statement and say, am I supporting this claim or assertion? Secondly, another consideration, you must also demonstrate that your change or action is feasible. Now, I always stress this during the semester because sometimes people come up with some harebrained ideas, right? And I'm not talking about students. I'm talking about people in general. We've got to make sure that our whatever we come up with is a feasible solution. If it's not feasible, then what's the point, right? For example, I always use this as an example. We want to keep ultraviolet radiation from harming human beings. So what if I propose that we go out into space, 300, 400,000 miles from the Earth. We'll get on the other side of the moon, and we'll put up a big screen, ultraviolet filter screen that'll filter the radiation of the sun radiation coming from the sun and block out ultraviolet radiation from hitting the Earth. And everybody goes, hey, that sounds like a great idea. The problem is that is absolutely not feasible, right? Can you imagine how much material it would take, how much time it would take, how impossible doing something like that would be? So with the technology that we have today and the abilities that we have today as far as doing things like that in outer space, not feasible, right? So make sure that your proposals are feasible. Thirdly, your change or your action must be directed at the future. We already talked about that. Living in the past does nothing for anyone. And proposals are a great place to use visuals. Now, I'm going to stop here and say that I'm going to let you use visuals in essay number 3. And again, we're not talking about essay 3 this week. I'm just giving you a heads up. It's going to be an argument or proposal. But when we do start talking about it, I will let you use visuals, but they won't count towards your page totals, okay? So you still got to give me 4 to 5 pages of written work. And we'll talk more about that as we get closer. But arguments of proposal do lend themselves to graphs and pie charts and tables and things like that. Let's talk about integrating research a little bit as part of this lecture. This is a little off topic, so I'm making a transition here. I'm switching gears. But we've talked about research in the past, but how to integrate research. So let's look at the types of research support to be integrated. What are some types of research that we would integrate? And the reason I bring this up is because at this point in the semester, I kind of see sometimes that students are not necessarily integrating research well. So what are some types of research that we can integrate? We've talked about this before. Statistics, numerical data, quotes, facts, logic, anything like that can be used as support for our research. Statistics are great. 33% of people say blank. Numerical data, skyscraper was 300 feet tall. That's great. Quotes, Mr. Smith said, da-da-da-da-da. Facts, John F. Kennedy was assassinated in 1963. All of these things are great. Logic, it simply doesn't make sense to think that way because all this stuff is good, but you got to make sure you integrate it strategically and integrate it, use different types of research. What I find with students oftentimes is that students like to use one type of, they like quotes, they'll use quotes all the time. They like statistics, they'll use statistics all the time. They like facts, so they'll just go out and get a whole bunch of facts. All that's great, but you need to be diverse in your use of research and your use of sources and material. So make sure that if you're using statistics, you're also using quotes. If you're using quotes, you're also using some facts and some numerical data and your own logic. Don't forget that. I can't stress this enough. Use your brains, okay? I'm not saying you're not doing this. Please don't read into what I'm saying. But don't be afraid to use your own minds. You all are smart people. Use your brains, okay? If you have something you want to say and logically can say it, then say it. You can make your own argument. You don't have to read it in a paper or a book. Go out on a limb a little bit. Don't be afraid to use your logic. You'll be surprised at how good it is when you exercise it, okay? So integrate research, integrate the different types of research. Some tips in integrating research. Be sure your support is relevant. Sometimes students will give me statistics that don't really make a whole lot of sense when it comes to the argument they're making. Make sure that your support is directly relevant to your main point and that it supports your main point, okay? I do read your papers, so don't try to get some statistic by me thinking I'm not going to see it. I will see it. Be sure the support directly addresses your main point. We've kind of talked about that. That's making sure it's relevant. Those two kind of go together. Be sure the support is from a reputable source. We've talked about this numerous times in the past. Make sure you're using scholarly sources. On essay number 2, which, by the way, I'm still grading. Hopefully by Monday or Tuesday I'll have them all graded. Remember, you got to give me about a week and a half to grade papers, and it'll be about a week and a half on Tuesday. So just be patient. I've almost got them all graded, but still a couple of you haven't gotten them graded out there. They're coming. I promise. Just give me the time to do it, okay? Because as you'll see, I give you good comments back, so it takes me time to do that. But one of the things I'm seeing is that students like to use .coms that maybe or maybe aren't the best sources. So look for reputable sources. I can't stress this enough. Scholarly books, journal articles are your best sources when it comes to scholarly papers. If you're using scholarly books and journal articles, you are going to impress your professors. When you start using .coms and .orgs, you're a little on shaky grounds, okay? So use reputable sources. Be sure to support that your support flows well into your argument. Make sure that you got a good, that it makes sense, it flows, it's not going to make your reader stop and start scratching his or her head. What you put in there makes sense. Be sure your support is not repetitious. I've seen people quote the same statistic 2 or 3 times in a paper, a 4 to 5 page paper, and that's probably just too much, right? If you quote a statistic more than once in a 4 to 5 page paper, you're probably being repetitious. I've seen people quote the same statistic in 3 different paragraphs, and find something new. Be original. Step outside the box a little bit, okay? And be sure your support is not monotonous, and that's what I was talking about a little bit ago when, just giving statistic after statistic after statistic or quote after quote after quote. Juggle it up a little bit. Use some quotes, use some statistics, use some facts. Make it interesting for your reader, okay? Don't forget about MLA formatting either. I'm seeing some problems with that in our paper. Remember, in-text citations. Number 1, you've got to use them. A lot of you didn't use them on this essay number 2. But when you do, remember author's last name and page number. Remember, you got to have a works cited page as well. So you got to have in-text citations and a works cited page, because look at bullet number 3 there. If something shows up in your works cited page, then there should be at least 1 in-text citation somewhere in the paper, preferably more than 1. In other words, if you've got something in your works cited page, you better have at least 1 in-text citation. And if you have an in-text citation, you should have something in the works cited page. Again, all citations must be per the MLA format, and that's chapter 22 in your textbook. So don't forget that on essay number 3. Essay structure has not changed, and as we get into essay number 3, we will be looking at this at length, okay? So at this point, that's it. That's all I have for this lecture. I appreciate your attentiveness. I appreciate that you are sticking with this class. If you have a classmate that's kind of starting to fall away, encourage them to stick with it. Remember, we are only going to do 3 essays in this class. I'll have you do another writing assignment, but we'll probably do that next week. But it's not going to be it'll be graded in as much as I will give you a participation grade for it. I'll give you some feedback probably, but essay number 3 is our 3rd and final graded major essay. Okay, so we were going to have 4, but with everything that shook us up, we're going to just drop that back to 3, and hope that helps you all out and takes a little stress off of you. Okay, all right. So this week, read your chapters 11 and 12, take quiz number 6, listen to this lecture, and then we'll get ready next week to start talking about the argument of proposal, essay number 3. And we'll have at it. This semester's going to start coming to a close real fast, so stick with it. Don't lose heart. If you have questions or concerns, let me know. I am here for you. All right, talk to you soon. Have a great week.